Acts chapter 14, the saga continues. Paul was stoned, drug outside the city of Lystra, and left for dead. The disciples gathered around and realized he's not dead. He gets up. Boy, I wish I could have been there to see it, because I think it would not have been just pop up. I think this was hard in every way, and yet he got up, went back into the city, stayed the night, and the next day he and Barnabas left for Derbe. Now, Derbe was not very far from Lystra, but it was another city, distinct and of its own. Verse 21. They preached the gospel in that city and won a large number of disciples. Large number, don't know what that means. More than a few. Then they returned to Lystra, Iconium, and Antioch. That's like, you get out of the Colosseum where the bears and the lions were trying to tear you apart, and then you go back in. Whatever else you want to say about the Apostle Paul, the man had nerve. They returned to Lystra, Iconium, and Antioch. Essentially, they retraced in reverse the trip that they had taken that got them to Derbe. And here's what they did in verse 22, strengthening the disciples and encouraging them to remain true to the faith. Now, somebody who has been through adversity is often the best person to encourage others who are experiencing adversity. When Paul and Barnabas went back to Lystra, Iconium, and Antioch, I don't think they were just blowing smoke up people's skirts. I think they weren't just hunk if you love Jesus and everything's gonna be okay because tomorrow, I love you tomorrow. No. I mean, think about this. If Paul had been stoned, well, no, let me back up. Because Paul had been stoned to the degree that those who were throwing the stones were convinced he was dead, they drug him outside the city and plopped him down. Don't you think that left a mark or two? We don't know how long they were in Derbe, Derbe. Sorry. For some reason, there's a town outside of Wichita, Kansas called Derbe, and that was in my head for some reason. Well, whatever. Lots of stuff, meaningless stuff goes on up here. I don't know how long they had been in Derbe. Luke doesn't, evidently it wasn't that important, and so we don't know how long. But I do know when he went back to Lystra, Iconium, and Antioch, the disciples there would have seen the marks of the adversity that he had experienced. Barnabas had seen it firsthand and would be able to verify and talk about it. The truth is, both of these guys had been traumatized. And for everybody who has experienced trauma, I have empathy for you. I also have this insight of realism from what we have here, that trauma does not have to neutralize a person. It certainly didn't neutralize Paul or Barnabas. They strengthened the disciples and encouraged them to remain true to the faith. And then listen to this. This is a verse that very few Christians even know is in the Bible. And of those who do, They don't like it very much. And of those who preach, they almost never preach about this. But it's here, and it deserves our attention. This is the second part of verse 22. This is what Luke records of Paul and Barnabas's encouraging interaction. We must go through many hardships to enter the kingdom of God, they said. All right, we're going to look at this in two ways. First of all, we must go through many hardships. This is the part that is not a happy thing for a Christian. I would much rather hear, when you say yes to Jesus, everything about your life is going to get better. Everything, literally everything. I think I've heard and read that from Christians. Well, this goes totally against the grain of that. We must go through hardships. Why? Because, well, if it didn't cost you anything, it won't mean anything to you. I don't think that's it. Because even though we were forgiven, there is still a consequence to be paid for our bad choices. Maybe, partly, but not wholly. Here's the reason I think we must go through hardships is because God intends to refine us. And nothing refines a person's character like hardships. Enduring hardships. Learning by experience. What do you do under hardship? So hardship is not a possibility. It's beyond a probability, and it is a reality. And he doesn't say some people are probably going to go through hardships. No. He says we, meaning us'ns. We must go through many hardships. Oh, it's a kick in the gut. Many hardships? Why can't we just say some hardship? I could deal with some. Many? Man, I don't know. But it is a reality. And everyone in this family of God is going to experience this is one of my interpretations of the idea of many hardships. We're going to experience more hardship than we want. Well, I could say that from my own life by saying one is more than I want. I don't think Paul spent time in prayer saying, God, I haven't had hardship lately. I need it. I want it. Bring it. You don't have to do that. The nature of life is hardships will find you. You don't have to go looking for them. Then the second part, which in some ways is equally as difficult. We must go through many hardships to enter the kingdom of God. Okay, now, so does that mean in order to be saved, we got to go through many hardships? I don't think so. Because what gets us into God's kingdom? Well, Paul wrote about this later to a church that he would visit later in the book of Acts, the church at Ephesus. We're saved by grace through faith. Ephesians 2:8. It isn't by our effort. It isn't by anything that we could do to deserve this. It's by God's grace, and only God's grace, which I enter into by faith, by trust. Now, what if this means as we enter God's kingdom, the nature of life is such that we must go through many hardships. There's one little piece of the many hardships thing that I left out. It's those two words, go through. Have you noticed about hardship that you often have some options about what you do about hardships? One is to pretend you don't have them. I can't say, oh, that never works. What I can say is it doesn't hold as great of a return on investment as other options. One option is to run from them. Another, that doesn't hold. You'll spend your whole life running away from something. And then the one that I think works is to get through them. And there are a lot of times that the best, maybe even in certain circumstances, the only thing you can do is get through them. Don't try to go around them. Don't try to pretend they don't exist. Don't run from them. Go through them. And as you go through them, God will refine your character as you are entering His kingdom. In some ways, all of our temporal life in time is about that refining. I don't believe in purgatory. I don't see it. Jesus never taught about purgatory. He certainly didn't use those words, but okay. The Catholic religion does. Some Episcopals do. Church of England does. What's the point of it? Well, purgatory comes from the word purge. That God is cleansing and purging us in order for us to enter His kingdom pure. I don't think I need to believe in purgatory because of the nature of life and what I think Paul, because he was a spokesman, would have said these words. We must go through many hardships to enter the kingdom of God. That life will give us more opportunity. I can only say for myself, it gives me more opportunity than I want for this purging to happen in my life, but only if I go through the hardships. I don't know what your hardship is. And some are going to have more than one. And you may be in a season where you're not facing a lot of adversity. Good for you. But bear in mind, I don't want to be a pessimist. I don't want to be Eeyore, but the truth is that you're going to go through. It's going to happen. You will experience hardship. Go through it. How can you go through it and learn the most about yourself, about life, and most importantly, about God and His faithfulness? There's a real possibility that as you go through it, these things may be difficult for you to see. It may be only as you get through that hardship and you reflect on it that you'll be able to mark those important things. but you got to mark them. Well, I'm done. I'll see you next time on So Care with Stevie Boy.